It's too hot today to wear anything else. I deeply apologize for anyone who is triggered by the fact that I am just wearing a sports bra and some trousers today. But welcome back to another video. Today's video is, admittedly, it's a little bit controversial because we're going to be talking about lying, and I'm going to be giving you tips on how I got away with lying a lot. And I think before I get into that, I should definitely give a bunch of disclaimers and why I'm doing this. Now, I remember asking a while back, like it must have been a month or two ago, on Twitter, like if I did a life hacks video about lying, would that be useful? And initially, what I was thinking is that for many people, for dissenting Muslims and for ex-Muslims who cannot come out to their families as being, as having left Islam, it's very difficult to sort of hide your identity as someone who no longer wants to follow such a totalitarian religion. And I think that's what people don't really understand, where people are like, oh, just keep your faith until you leave. It's not that easy, because Islam isn't like Christianity where you can just kind of not do anything and still possibly be a Christian. In Islam, you have to pray 5 times a day. For women, you have to cover. There's certain things that there's certain just markers of being a Muslim that you have to uphold in order to prove how Muslim you are. And especially if you come from a very, very religious family. Liberal families, I feel like you can get away with a lot. But especially if you come from a very, very religious family, it's very difficult to pretend that you are a conservative Muslim when you no longer identify with Islam or want to identify with a more liberal system of Islam. So that is why I want to do it. The other thing is that I kind of trophy myself as a pretty good liar. I'm able to weave interesting and detailed stories and remember them for a very long time until I have no use for them anymore. And, I don't make a habit of lying, but if I'm out in the open and, for example, someone wants my number or someone, wants to get to know me and I'm not about it that day, friends have witnessed me telling lies and half-truths, and I can do that very, very well, and I've used that to my advantage. Now, I understand that typically speaking, lying is not a good thing to do. It is not a good way to live, so I certainly don't advocate for people to just be lying left, right, and center on a day-to-day basis when they don't need to be. But I think that's a key word, need to be. I feel as though lying is something that we as people need to do from time to time, not just to make our lives more convenient, but also in order to survive, in a sense, especially when you live in a precarious situation, like with my family, where there was a lot of violence, a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse, all kinds of abuses. And even when I was a practicing Muslim and I would watch my siblings lie, and their lies would just fall apart because they admittedly were not very good at it, it would irk me, because no, what you're doing is wrong, but if you're going to lie about it, at least tell a good lie. Like, at least give me something to go with here. And I feel as though, oh, this is going to be a mess of a video. I feel as though learning how to lie properly would, just make a bunch of people's lives just so much more simple. And I would like to clarify, because I know it's going to be in the comments and it's going to be in my like to dislike ratio. I don't enjoy lying. It's not something that I enjoy doing, despite the fact that I am fairly good at it. It's not something I enjoy doing because I feel as though it limits me in many ways, because now I have to behave in the story of my lives. If I meet an acquaintance, for example, and I know that I am not going to see them again, or it is highly unlikely, like there's like a 1 in a million chance that I will see them again, and I lie to them, I will be safe in the knowledge that I will not need to confront that person again. So I will either pass off a different number to mine to them, or I will tell them that I do something that I don't. Like a couple of days ago, I told a guy who was trying to hit on me that I was a primary school teacher when I am not. Sometimes I will lie about, where I'm ethnically from, because I just want to see people's reactions. I am not doing anything malicious with it. It's just something that, I'm curious to see if people buy it or not. And I guess you could call that, bad and wrong. There are many philosophers who thought lying in any circumstance was bad. I certainly don't follow that philosophy. I think that lying is a skill, and it has its purpose and its place in human intelligence. But I don't think that it's healthy to be constantly living a lie. So when I give you these tools and when I impart this controversial knowledge to you, I don't mean for you to continuously live a lie for the rest of your life, because there is nothing more liberating than living authentically, and that is everything that I am about. But I understand. I fully understand, because I've lived it. I understand that there are circumstances in which sometimes you just have to pretend before you are ready to be your authentic self. And I'm simply giving you tools on how to make your caricature a little bit more believable. And, these aren't really like how to lie tutorials. This is just like, in my opinion and in my experience, how a lie is more believable. And some of the things I'm going to say sounds pretty fucked up, because it is, and unfortunately we live in a world, and some of us live in a circumstance where it's the only way to really survive. It's the only way to just keep the facade and keep the peace within our lives. And it's unfortunate, but we've got to make the best out of a bad situation. And unfortunately, sometimes that means we got to lie. So here are my top tips for lying to your family while living as a dissenting Muslim or a closeted ex-Muslim. So the first thing, and this is going to sound fucked up, is that you need to build rapport and you need to build trust with the people that you intend to lie to and pretend in front of. And yes, that sounds very messed up, but it's something you have to do so that once you build that level of trust, you get a bit more breathing room to do a lot more. So for example, while I was living with a relative, a family, there were certain rules that I had to abide to. Like I had a curfew at 9 o'clock as an adult woman. I had limits in how I could dress. So I still had to wear a hijab, for example. And there were other things like who I could interact with, my use on, how much I could use social media and things like that. And the first thing that I would say about, being able to essentially pretend in front of people who won't allow you to be authentically yourself is that you need to follow these rules and you need to build a rapport with these people before you start pretending. Because if you are outwardly rebellious, that will only increase restrictions on you. So the first thing and the biggest tip that I can give you is that you need to build rapport before you start pretending. You can't go in rebellious. If you go in rebellious, it will create more restrictions on you, unless you want to. And that is something that, I can stand by. If that is truly you, I'm not going to limit you to simply being a caricature of yourself. But if you want to keep everything under wraps, you got to build a rapport. If you're a dude, keep that beard. If you're a girl, wear that hijab, around your family. And the second tip that I will give you in terms of lying, and I'm trying to treat this as gingerly as possible because I understand that this is a controversial subject and that lying is not typically a good thing to do. The second tip that I will give you is that you need to test small lies before you dive into the big ones. You need to test small lies, and some of the biggest ways of lying and getting people to believe you is to play dumb and ask multiple questions or tell half-truths. So if you are, for example, asked, where were you or why were you late? Just tell a half-truth. If there was traffic on the way and that added to your lateness, make that seem the big thing rather than saying that, oh, I was out with my male friends or whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. And seem very angry about how much the traffic was, like irrationally angry about how big the traffic was. And it's such a tiny lie. It's such a tiny lie to tell, but it goes a long way if you know how to do it well. The other thing that I will say is that if you don't need to provide details, don't. Because the next tip of mine is that you need a good memory. If you're going to be lying a lot, you need a good memory and you need to remember all the lies that you tell, because you're essentially living two different lives. You are living your authentic life that you are, portraying to your friends and the people you trust, and you're living a false caricature of a life, and that is the one that you need to remember. So if you can avoid details when you are telling lies, avoid them. Something that I used to do while I was closeted as an ex-Muslim and living with family is that when it was like Eid time or when there were family gatherings, I would avoid them by staying at Airbnbs. And I would tell simple lies. So I would say that I was staying with this person or I was going here, and I would put in little details like, oh, my friend or someone else was going to introduce me to someone that could be a potential, suitor to me, and things like that. And we would laugh and giggle about that. And, if there were questions like, oh, is he Bengali? Because that's a big thing in my family. I'd be like, no, but we'll see what happens. And then she was like, oh, you're probably not going to accept it then. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But that's my point, like, if you build a rapport with someone and you have a relationship with someone, and I'm not saying that that relationship in and of itself has to be fake, but you need to use that relationship in order to place these lies on top of it, because it functions in that way, and it almost sounds like a manipulation tactic, and it is a manipulation tactic, because you are essentially using someone's trust in you to so that you can do what you want. And it is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly soul-crushing, not just for you, but for the other person as well, because they feel like they couldn't be trusted. And to an extent, because of the fear you have that's built around, because of the fear you have that you've built around yourself and the reactions of your family in your experience, or that you fear from the experience of other people in your family, unfortunately, and I can't stress this enough, unfortunately, it has to be like that. And you need to tell them these little lies so that you can have this breathing room to live authentically and be your authentic true self in some form. And I have to deeply apologize for that, because that was something that was both incredibly difficult to do and also difficult for that family member in particular to take. And I apologize for that, but I cannot apologize for needing to do it, because I did need to do it. But yeah, test small lies in the beginning, ask leading questions, just to keep that rapport and keep building that relationship, and remember all of the lies that you tell until you don't need to. Once you close a lie, which means, for example, if it's Ramadan, for example, and you want to eat and you're in a Western country and you can get food quite easily, your excuse, your lie could be, oh, I'm just going out for a walk. I'm just going out for a walk. I'm going to be an hour. I'm going to walk from A to Z. And people might ask, oh, well, it's Ramadan, shouldn't you rest? No. And you can be like, oh, but I read something. I want this fasting experience to be like a health kick for me, So if that's your story, for example, that I'm going to walk for an hour, they have to see you leave walking, right? You can't just hop on a bus across the road and then someone sees you do that. So you have to start by walking. You have to have a plan of where you're going, where you're getting this food, if people are going to see you. When I used to get food from outside, and this was not when I was living with my father because that was impossible, but when I was living with these other family members and I was passing off as if I was fasting, when I would get food, I would actually walk to the place that I was getting food from, and I would know that none of my family members were going to be there. So that is something that you have to keep in mind, that you have to constantly be paranoid when you do this, is that you have to be aware that maybe no one would be there. And if you can get far enough that you don't need to walk to that location, because let's be real, you're fasting and walking an hour seems a little ridiculous. But that gives you at least like 2 hours, 2.5 hours to be outside and have your food and then come back. But if you're going to pass it off as like, I'm on this health kick and that's why I'm walking and doing this like today, you may have to keep doing it. You may have to keep doing it until Ramadan is over, and then also after Ramadan and continue your health kick. You know what I'm saying? But once it's over, once, for example, Ramadan is over and you can freely walk around and get food wherever you want, and you can also do this walk or whatever, once you've completed that and you've closed the lie, you can forget all the information because it's not a big deal. You went for a walk, So yeah, once it's closed, it's closed. If the lie is a little bit more urgent, like something that I would do is if I was out with friends, because I had a curfew that was at 9 o'clock and I couldn't really stay at other people's houses. If I was out with friends and I had stayed out a little too late, most of the time my excuses would be, oh, there was a lot of traffic, or oh, I just, lost track of time, which usually was the truth anyway. Or I would own up and text my family and tell them that I was going to be late, and wouldn't provide a reason why unless they asked why. And if they asked why, I would simply say, I lost track of time. Don't lie unless you actually need to lie. If there's no need to lie, don't lie. Because if the lying adds to your paranoia. So if you're going to continue, lie recklessly, almost pathologically, you're going to have to remember a lot more details that you really don't need to. So if you don't need to lie, don't lie. But small lies will help you. The fourth thing is also a little bit fucked up. Keep an honest reputation. Let people know that you're an honest person. Like if they ask you your opinion on something, be honest about it. Trophy honesty as something that you value. And it should be something that you value. It should be. Even as a cold-hearted liar. This is a ridiculous video. I apologize. But trophy honesty as something that is part of your character. If people ask you your opinion, give it. Give it honestly. If you don't have to lie, don't lie. And always pay the price for your mistakes. Something that I had learned when studying about Spartans was that children were punished for stealing, but not because stealing was wrong. They were punished because they got caught. And I took that sort of mantra into my life as a slightly toxic thing. But I do agree to an extent that if you're going to do something, maybe not fully 100% good, if you're not going to do that, then at least make an effort to do it well. And when you get caught, pay the price. Own your mistake. So anytime that I got caught in a lie, I would wholeheartedly admit, I'm sorry, that was untrue, or that was a lie. And then you have to deal with the repercussions of that. So for example, there was one time where I broke my curfew because I was out with my work colleagues at a dinner, and I had just joined that job. I was only like 15 days into that job, so I wanted to make a good reputation, and they had, invited me for dinner, and I had told my family that I was going to a dinner, but I had overstepped my curfew, so I had arrived late. I dealt with the consequence of that. My curfew was shortened. I made sure to get it at home on time. I spent less time with friends. If you get caught in a mistake, even if it's not your fault, pay the price, because it will build your reputation as an honest person, and it will keep that rapport. Obviously, if it's something a lot bigger than that, that's a fairly small mistake. If it's something a lot bigger than that, you have to assess that differently. Like, I got caught, for example, dating someone. I got caught staying at my boyfriend's house, and that was actually a pinnacle of me just leaving my family home because it got so ridiculous. But if it's something as big as that, you need to assess whether it's worth lying and continuing to keep this caricature, and whether or not you can make it out on your own. If you can live alone, then what's the point of keeping this facade? What is the point? And that is something that I had to assess. And I understand that people get caught in much bigger mistakes than simply overstepping a curfew. So when you get caught, you need to accept the punishment for that mistake. Obviously, if it's something that involves physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, honor killings, honor violence, if it's something that includes physical harm, psychological harm, you need to leave that situation. You need to call the police, and you need to leave that situation. But if it's something small, like your allowance on the internet is cut short, or you can't go out after 8 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, then I grunted and bared it. That is my philosophy on what you should do if you get caught in a mistake. The last thing I did is that I used disputes to my advantage. So there were members of my family, who did not talk to each other. And I don't know, this might be very exclusive to me, or exclusive to fewer people than the general public. But I used family disputes to my advantage. So I had family members on different sides of my family, so my mother's side and my father's side, who never spoke to each other. So the times where I would stay in a hotel to avoid my family, or stay at an Airbnb or a friend's, or my boyfriend's at the time to avoid my family, I would just say that I was hanging out with that other side of my family, because I knew that no one was going to call up and check. And I did that for a really long time, actually. And I got away with that for a very long time. Until someone decided, oh, maybe we should actually call that family and see what was going on. But also, despite using that dispute to my advantage, what I would do is actually go and stay at those relative houses. So I would go and stay at my, my maternal side's houses, because I was mainly stuck with my paternal side. So I would go and stay at their houses, and I would call them from there just to let them know that, hey, I actually am here. And then, again, building that rapport, whenever I said that I was there, they would just accept it. And those are more or less the ways that I got away with lying for a really long time. those were the ways that I did it. But I will say, and I will reiterate, that lying really eats at your soul. Like, it really, really does. And since leaving such a toxic situation where I felt as though I needed to do that, I am the biggest advocate for living as an authentic human being and living your truth and being honest. I don't even lie to people who ask me, like, how is your family, or how are your parents, because I need to, not only do I need to create that normality for myself and accept that everything that has happened to me is my normal, even if it isn't like widely normal, it's my normal and I need to accept that. It also just allows me some breathing space to just be myself. And you need to nurse your soul while you are constantly lying, while you are closeted, or you just want to be a different person to who your family expects you to be. And the way that I would do that is that I would have one or two friends that I would just tell everything to, all my honest things that I did to. And towards the end of the breakdown of my family relationships, I also had one family member that I would just be honest with and tell the honest truth to, where I was going, how I was doing, that I got a tattoo, all that stuff. Where my place in my faith was. And I had my friend, I had Alicia, I had Simon, who I would tell all the things that I got up to, and often spent a lot of time with them as well. So they would be the catalyst for me having to lie sometimes. Like, I would go drinking with Alicia. It wasn't like drinking because I couldn't come home drunk, but I would have a couple of drinks with her. And those were good days. But, I would tell her everything that was going on in my life and be honest about it and tell her my plans, my hopes, my dreams. And I think that that's really important, whether or not you have this person in real life, or you just, know them online. Have someone that you can tell, all your little secrets to, because it is one of the most liberating things that you can do while you're in a situation where you just have to lie about your identity and who you are. Even when you're filling out forms and someone else is going to read it and you have to write something that, you don't fully believe in. And yeah. That would be my last piece of advice, honestly. Like, build rapport with the people that you intend to lie to repetitively. Test the water, know your boundaries. Tell little lies as much as you can. Avoid telling huge lies, because when you tell a huge lie, you have to be ready to create an entire story and remember all the details of that story. So if you can avoid telling big lies, depend on small lies, half-truths, and leading questions. Have a good memory for the lies that you tell until you close them. And that is so important, because I have seen so many people tell a lie and then not understand that they have to keep to that lie. They have to keep to that lie until the matter is closed. So have a good memory for those lies. Keep an honest reputation and trophy honesty and authentic living. Pay the price when you are caught. Accept your punishment, not because what you did was wrong, but because you got caught. And the last thing is, use disputes to your advantage. And the biggest piece of advice that I can give you, just the bonus piece of advice to nurture your soul, is to have an honest relationship with the people you truly trust. Don't lie to the people that, you fully trust and who accept you for who you are. Don't lie to people who you trust. Don't be a pathological dickhead, basically. Don't lie for the sake of lying. Lie because you need to, and your mental stability and your need for individualism depends on it. Your survival, in a sense, depends on, even if it's not that dramatic, do it only because your survival depends on it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that this video was easy to understand in some form. I understand, I fully get that this is a controversial topic, and I am ready for the the backlash that I may get and the weird comments that I may get. Oh, you're an ex-Muslim teaching Muslims how to lie. I'm ready for those, but I do think that this is somewhat necessary, because if telling a lie because I taught you to do it saves you, physical torment or mental torture in some way, I view that as a win. And that is my reason for doing this, and that is why I think it's important. But in every other aspect of your life, where you do not need to pretend to be exactly who you are, I will trophy authenticism and being true to who you really are. And I really, really do believe that living your authentic life is so important above all. You need to be who you are. And I would prefer that you use these tips as a stepping stone to reach that, rather than use this as a general way of living. It is not. It is for a specific circumstance, and that is what this is for. So thank you for listening to me. Please tell me what you think, good or bad, I don't mind. If you have critical feedback for me, please do give it to me. I would like to hear that. And also, if you have stories or anything else to add to this list, please let me know. And I'll pin them up to the top of the comments or whatever. But thank you, and I will see you in the next video. Hopefully the next video will be a vlog about me going to Amsterdam, because I will be going there tomorrow. And I'm really excited for that, because I haven't left the country on my own. But until then, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.